Recently, my mom and her fiance were arrested, and now my maternal grandparents hate me for it. This all happened because I called the cops, and I had good reasons for doing so. My mom and I have never gotten along, especially since my dad passed away 10 years ago. I'm 17 now, and in a couple of months I'm supposed to start college. I've always known my mom wouldn't save a dime for me, so I understood I'd have to work and save money on my own. I started working at 14, taking on various jobs after school, and saving money for the past 4 years to have at least something for college. Relatives often gave me cash for birthdays and holidays, which I also set aside. In the end, I managed to save nearly $7,000, and I was thrilled about it. All the money was in cash, stored in a wooden box my dad had made for me. I kept it hidden in the corner of my closet. I didn't have a bank account because my mom forbade me from opening one, and I never told anyone about the box, so I still don't understand how anyone found it. A few days ago, I discovered the box was completely empty. When I asked my mom what happened, she said her fiance took the money to invest in buying his new house. I was absolutely furious when I heard this. A huge fight broke out at home, me on one side, and my mom and her fiance on the other. But in the end, I'm just a 17-year-old kid, and they were older and had more power, so I had to back down. The only thing I could do was go to my room, lock the door, and cry for hours. Everything I had worked for was gone, and I'd have to start from scratch. I wasn't even sure I could save any money before college. I felt devastated and alone. That day, I decided I'd get revenge because I couldn't let this slide. Fortunately, I got my revenge 3 days later. Now they're arrested and facing consequences for what they did. The only problem is my grandparents, who were always on my side but have suddenly turned against me. I don't understand this at all. My mom's fiance, let's call him Rob, came into our lives 2 years ago, and I hated him from the start. He's one of the worst people I've ever met. I'd even call him an abuser. He never touched me physically, but he was definitely verbally and emotionally abusive. Usually my mom bore the brunt of it, but sometimes he'd lash out at me saying whatever came to his mind. He'd curse at me, try to bring me to tears like he did with my mom, and get even angrier when he realized I didn't care. This would make him lose control and say even worse things, and my mom never even tried to defend me. After my dad's death, my mom didn't date anyone for a few years, but then she met Rob. For the first couple of months, he was fairly nice and tolerable, but then they had their first big fight, and that's when he showed his true colors. He manipulated my mom however he wanted, and within 6 months he moved in with us. He was a useless, lazy jerk who couldn't hold a job for long. For context, he's about 35 but still occasionally asks his parents for money because he has zero financial sense and always spends way more than he earns. When he fights with my mom, he takes money from his parents, but when things are calm, he's happy mooching off my mom. The saddest part is that my mom isn't a millionaire who can support a partner used to living large. She's just a senior manager at a local supermarket. While her salary is decent, it's nowhere near enough for the lifestyle Rob wants. Either way, I never let their problems become mine. I've tried to be as independent as possible since I was 14. I avoided asking my mom for anything beyond the absolute basics. And once I started working, I stopped asking her for those too. I don't ask my mom for anything, and the only things I rely on her for are housing and food. I don't expect her to do anything more because I know it's pointless. She made it clear from childhood that she doesn't like me. She's never been kind to me, and I always felt like she didn't want me around. As I grew older, that feeling turned into certainty. When my dad was alive, he always stood up for me and supported me if my mom got too angry. But after he died, I was completely alone, and that's how it's been for the past few years. Things only got worse when Rob showed up, but I always comforted myself with the thought that I'd soon leave for college and forget all of this. Now that seems completely unrealistic and unlikely. For 3 days after my money was stolen, I sat in my room doing nothing because I was in a deep depression. The day after I found out the money was gone, we moved into a new house. I did all the work I was supposed to do, but didn't say a word to my mom or Rob, and they didn't seem to care at all. On the third day, my mom told me to dress up because they were throwing a housewarming party that evening. I started yelling at her, saying I wasn't going to participate in anything because they stole my money, and the only reason they could afford this house was the money they took from me. This really pissed her off. She said that now that we finally had our own house instead of renting, I should be happy for them, shut up and forget about it because I owe her for my entire life. She meant raising me, even though that's her legal responsibility, and not some favor she did for me. As for the house, it was way too big for the three of us. I knew they only bought it to impress everyone with its prestigious address and spacious rooms. That day, I was so upset that I did something I'd never done before. I called my dad's parents. It was tough because after my dad's death, my paternal grandparents distanced themselves from us. I guess it was too painful for them to stay in touch. I don't know why, but they just stopped communicating with us. Despite that, I still had their numbers, and in a moment of desperation, I decided to call them. My maternal grandparents, with whom I had a better relationship, took a pretty neutral stance in this situation. The day the money was stolen, I told my mom's parents about it, expecting them to talk to her and resolve the issue. But they just said they wanted my mom to buy a new house. And they were happy for her. They told me to look for the positives. We'd finally have our own home, and wouldn't have to worry about monthly rent anymore. Their reaction seemed strange to me, because they'd always tried to be on my side before. Even if they didn't confront my mom directly, they'd always sympathized with me. This time it was different, and I couldn't understand why. I was so angry at them that I stopped reaching out. That day, when my mom told me to just deal with it, I decided to contact my paternal grandparents, hoping they'd react differently and give me some hope for the future. I don't know why, but I had a gut feeling I needed to call them specifically. Thankfully, they answered my call. As soon as they picked up, I told them everything that had happened. I said I understood how painful it must be for them to stay in touch with us, and that they didn't want to. But this was an emergency, and if my dad were alive, he'd want them to help me. I explained that my mom had taken my money, that I'd worked so hard for years to save for college, and that I wasn't sure I'd even be able to go now. After I finished, my grandpa said he was confused because apparently my dad had set up a college fund for me. He didn't understand why I'd needed to save money separately. This was a complete shock to me because my mom had never mentioned it, and I'd never asked, assuming she hadn't set anything aside for me. I'd completely forgotten that my dad might have planned something for me, especially since he knew he was going to die soon. He passed away so young that I assumed he hadn't had time to prepare anything. So when my grandparents shared this news, I was stunned. At that point I was already furious and upset, so I immediately asked them to send me any proof I could use against my mom. They said they'd try to find the documents and call me back in a couple of hours. I sat in my room, trying to piece everything together, and suddenly it hit me. My mom and Rob had clearly stolen my college fund to use the money for themselves and buy the house. As far as I know, my mom didn't earn enough to afford a house like that, and Rob hadn't worked in the last 3 months, so I doubt he had the money for it either. All I needed was proof, and then I'd report it to the police. A few hours later, my grandparents finally got back to me and sent photos of documents my mom had signed, agreeing to use the money my dad left for my education and to ensure I had a comfortable life. I literally laughed out loud when I read that, because she'd done everything to make my life as uncomfortable as possible. My mom had signed those documents herself, and it infuriated me that my grandparents had never mentioned this before. It felt like they'd abandoned me after my dad's death and completely turned their backs on me. My mom was never really there for me. My maternal grandparents tried to seem like they were on my side, but it was probably just an act, and my dad's parents were too consumed by their own grief to care about me. When I asked my grandparents why they hadn't shown me the documents earlier, they gave a pretty weak excuse. They said they'd simply forgotten about them after my dad's death. I was too young back then, and as I grew up, we stopped talking, so the documents slipped their minds because they're not young anymore. I couldn't argue with that, and decided to let it go. Once I had the proof in hand, I called my friend whose dad worked for the police and said I needed help. That evening, right in the middle of the housewarming party, my friend's dad showed up at our house with a police officer and a lawyer to arrest my mom and her fiance. By spending my money, my mom had basically set herself up for a lawsuit since she'd violated the terms of the agreement she'd signed years ago. While I explained to the party guests what was happening, my mom and Rob were finally arrested. It was the most satisfying moment of my life. Almost everyone they'd wanted to impress, former colleagues, friends, was shocked and disgusted as they were led away in handcuffs. Even in that moment, my mom and Rob looked so arrogant, glaring at me like I'd done something awful. My mom's parents were at the party too, and seeing their daughter taken away in handcuffs upset them deeply. After that, they refused to speak to me. When all the guests left, I was alone in the huge house, completely unsure of what to do next. I felt awful because, even though they were arrested, they'd probably be released on bail within a few hours. Even if I planned to press charges, it would take months to gather evidence of their guilt, and there was still a chance they could wiggle out of it and turn the situation in their favor. There was no way to predict how it would end, and until then, I wouldn't get back the money my dad left for me. Either way, I was at a loss. I couldn't sell the house because it was in my mom's and Rob's names. Even if I wanted to force them to sell it and return my money, I'd have to go to court and fight for it with a lawyer. Luckily, I didn't have to worry about legal costs, because my friend and his dad were kind enough to promise to handle everything, understanding the tough spot I was in. Still, I had no idea what to do next. To make matters worse, the only people who'd been on my side no longer wanted to talk to me. My maternal grandparents declared they wanted nothing to do with me, calling me an ungrateful son. They could understand that my mom and I had a bad relationship, but sending her to jail over this, after everything she'd supposedly done for me, was too much for them. They completely cut me off, and that hurt the most. Now, I feel utterly alone. For now, I've definitely won the battle against my mom and Rob, but in the long run, it feels like I've lost so much more. I don't know what to do now and feel completely helpless for sending my mom and her fiance to jail for stealing my savings, which they used to buy their new house. Before we move on to the next update, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this story in the comments. In my opinion, no matter how much commenters might judge me, this situation is clearly complicated. On one hand, I totally get why the author did what he did, and he's kind of in the right. On the other hand, treating your parents like this feels really wrong. If I put myself in the mom's shoes, man, if my son did something like this to me, I'd be incredibly hurt. I wouldn't even understand why I had a kid in the first place. If you can even say that about children. Sure, you could argue it's a mom's duty to raise me, and she owes me just because I was born. But on one hand, nobody asked her to have a son, and on the other, she did give birth to him, put her money and effort into raising him, so dismissing that feels unfair too. You really get it when you have kids of your own. Overall, it's a pretty philosophical question in my view. Let's move on to the update and find out what happened next. Update 1. I moved out of the house I was living in, the one my mom and Rob bought. It's been a week since I reported them to the police, and after 48 hours in custody, they were released. As soon as I heard they were back home, I decided to leave immediately because I didn't want any conflict. I'd already packed my things, so all I had to do was walk out. The moment they came in, I left. They tried to stop me and talk, but I wasn't about to engage and got out as fast as I could. I hopped into a taxi I'd called in advance and went straight to my friend's place, where I'd been staying for the past 3 days. By the way, this is the same friend whose dad helped with the arrest and the lawyer. Now, the three of us, me, his dad, and the lawyer, meet every day to figure out how to resolve this case quickly. At this point, I'm so drained that I'm ready to settle out of court. We've arranged a meeting with them, their lawyer, and a court-appointed mediator in a couple of days. We'll see how the negotiations go. If they refuse my terms, we'll have to go to court, and who knows how long that could take. I'm trying hard to settle peacefully, but I want it to be fair, and I need the financial support to finish my education. My friend's dad said they can help me with money for now, but I don't feel great about accepting their financial help. I'm not sure how to feel about it. Update 2. Well, something interesting happened, and I'm shaking with anger because what I found out is just disgusting. It all seems sketchy, but my mom sent screenshots, so now I don't even know what to believe. Only 2 days remain until our meeting with the mediator. Just a couple of hours ago, my mom reached out to me via email, saying she urgently needed to talk. I'd blocked her everywhere possible, so she had no access to me, but she created a new account and sent an email that turned everything upside down. I don't want to waste time, so I'll get straight to the point. My entire damn family conspired against me. That's right, the reason my grandparents on both sides have been acting so strange all this time is that they were in on this scheme from the start. My mom didn't just spend the money my dad left for me. They all took their share and kept quiet about it. Now I finally understand why my maternal grandparents were so upset when I sent my mom to jail, and why they always pretended to support me, but never stood up to her. She had dirt on them. It also explains why my dad's parents didn't bother telling me about the documents my mom signed, until I asked. They were all in on it, and my mom sent me proof. She was emailing them when I was about 14 or 15. Luckily, she kept the emails because they were all dumb enough to discuss it over email. She sent me screenshots of those emails, and said that since I had her arrested, it's only fair to drag everyone else into this too. It's not right to punish just her when they all conspired against me and spent the money for their own gain. My dad left me a huge sum, but all these people, including my dad's lawyer, decided it was better to hide it from me and use the money for themselves. I still can't believe this happened, and keep rereading the emails, trying to make sense of it because it feels completely unreal. My whole family turned against me, even my dad's parents, which is just shocking. The only reason my grandparents told me about the documents and sent me proof recently is that their conscience finally got to them, and they realized they were doing something wrong. When I called and asked for help, they decided to tell me the truth. They'd planned to do it much earlier, but my mom and her parents convinced them to stay quiet, warning that it would drag them down too. They promised not to reach out and tell me the truth on their own, but if I ever asked, they'd come clean. When I asked if they could help, they sent me those documents as proof. That's how it all came to light. I'm glad they helped me then, but it doesn't excuse them. It also explains why they acted so weird and distant, even after sending me the documents. They felt guilty. They still can't openly admit what they did, and they're genuinely ashamed, as they should be. But my brain just isn't working right now. I don't know what to believe or how to deal with this. I haven't even told my friend what I found out because it's too overwhelming. I'm shaky. I feel betrayal, pain, and rage all at once, and I don't know what to do with these emotions. Obviously, I'll have to talk to the lawyer, because this is a huge revelation, and we'll definitely bring it up during negotiations. My mom, in trying to drag everyone else down with her and get revenge on those who ratted her out, forgot that she's also screwing herself over. She'll lose way more. Still, I'm glad she told me all this because now I know for sure that there's no one in this world who truly has my back, except maybe a couple of people. I couldn't rely on anyone, and that's the reality. Probably the only thing I can do now is tell my friend so he can pass it on to his dad, and we can all sit down with the lawyer to figure out how to move forward. But no matter what, I'm definitely going to college. I made that decision this year, and I won't back down. I'm ready to ask my friend's dad for help. I won't ask him to pay for my education, but I think I'll ask him to co-sign for a student loan application. That seems like the only viable option. Update 3. Hey, today we had the meeting with the mediator, and as I said, I brought up what my mom told me. Essentially, she confessed to everything she did, and now she'll have to return the money she and the rest of the family stole from me. She tried to justify it, claiming some of the money supposedly went toward raising me, so we can't blame her or expect the full amount back from the fund. But I insisted that, even if that's true, my grandparents still have to return their share. They didn't just take my money, they took my dreams and aspirations. I'm demanding everything be returned so I can live a decent life. I'm done being dependent. I discussed it with the lawyer and my friend's dad, and they said cases like this sadly aren't uncommon. But that doesn't change how despicable my mom's actions were. They were just as furious as I was. They promised they'd do everything in their power to ensure I'd never have to depend on anyone else's money again. Because if my family hadn't stolen those funds, I could have lived comfortably since childhood. Before he passed, my dad made sure everything was set for me to have a happy life, but my family couldn't stand that. They had to take it all, such selfish people. But now it's over. My lawyer and I decided we're going to hit them where it hurts. No more sitting back and watching them live it up at my expense. One thing's clear, there's going to be another meeting, and this time all my grandparents will be there because it's obvious now they're involved too. This might end up in court, but for now I'll just take out a student loan and get through this period. But I will get justice and more. I'll make sure they return everything they stole. That money was meant for me and me alone, not them. It was an agreement my mom signed. It was a promise they all made to my dad to protect me and make me happy. They're all traitors, and I never want to see them again. That's it for now. As I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Personally, at first, I wasn't sure if the author was fully in the right or not, but now it's crystal clear. He's 100% justified. His mom, grandparents, they stole his future, his money. There's no excuse for that. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous video which you'll see right here, and good luck to you all.